Hi, everyone around the world. I've got Chocolate with me to start off tonight, and he came on his own. They seem to have accepted that every once in a while when the lights go on, now they want to be with me, and I'm so glad. And listen, I've got good news. We have broken through 184,000 subscribers, and let's keep going and growing in this revolutionary time on Earth, in this solar system and beyond. Last week, I reported about the loud Saturday, September 4th, Clarksville, Tennessee boom that shook houses and was recorded on 2 different door security cameras without any explanation forthcoming. And even though the boom shook the ground and houses, the U.S. Geological Service said their seismometers did not register any seismic vibration signals from a quake. And then only 3 days later, after the Earthfiles YouTube channel broadcast, on Saturday night, September 11th, 2021, about 15 minutes before midnight, the USGS News in Finland reported, quote, "A loud explosion sound was heard across many neighborhoods of Helsinki, but the source of the bang remains a mystery," close quote. Helsinki, Finland, is on the Baltic Sea, about 677 miles northwest of Moscow, Russia, and 704 miles northeast from Copenhagen, Denmark. Helsinki police received reports from 8 different neighborhoods, all describing a, quote, "hollow, explosive sound that was compared to a very loud gunshot," close quote. Some in the media suggested maybe a meteor crashed into the Helsinki atmosphere or there was an earthquake. But the University of Helsinki Seismology Department said nothing showed up in seismic stations, just like no seismic evidence in Clarksville, Tennessee last week. Another suggestion was that an Air Force fighter jet went through the sound barrier and created a supersonic bang. But as of today, all of those possibilities have been ruled out, including a statement by the communications chief of the Finland Defense Forces, quote, "There was no military flight activity in Helsinki at that time of 11:45 p.m. Saturday evening, September 11th, 2021, close quote. And I would also like to share with you tonight one particular letter that I have received that came typewritten on stationery through the U.S. mail. The sender did not include a return address or his name, but according to his anonymous letter, he was a naval commander in the 1970s on the historically famous USS Enterprise CVN-65, known from World War II onward as, quote, "the linchpin of the Pacific because the Enterprise was involved in the most important naval battles in the Pacific theater, in particular the Battle of Midway in 1942. As a journalist, wanting to report facts and still wanting to respect anonymity, here are USS Enterprise CVN-65 commanding officers between 1970 and 1980 listed in the military.wikia.org website. Captain Forrest S. Peterson, Captain Ernest E. Tassat Jr., Captain Carroll C. Smith Jr., Captain James W. Austin. I respect very much the writer of this 2021 letter, who must feel as frustrated as all of you and I do that approaching the middle of the 21st century, there are still policies of lies and denials about the presence of non-human intelligences on and inside our planet, our moon, in this solar system, and beyond. This is the letter to me, reporter and editor, Earthfiles.com in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Quote, "Dear Miss Howe, in the 1970s, I was a Navy commander on board the USS Enterprise CVN-65. We were on an unlogged secret mission, one which even without identifying myself, I am ill prepared to divulge. The following mention had nothing to do with our mission. We were about 200 miles off the coast of Fortaleza, Brazil, heading north. Radar picked up an object heading west toward our starboard side at around 2,500 miles an hour. I gave the order to launch 2 F-14 Tomcat jets to intercept if needed. The pilots got within around 100 yards of the object, a silvery saucer, which they described as being about 80 feet in diameter and about 20 feet high, with no visible seams, but what appeared to be 2 small portholes. The saucer and our jets were at an altitude of around 19,000 feet. Suddenly, the saucer streaked straight up into space like a blur. The Tomcats had no chance of pursuit. Both pilots and their RIOs, those are radar intercept officers, that is a naval flight officer who occupies the rear seat of aircraft such as the F-14 Tomcat and the F-4 Phantom II. Those men had flown numerous missions in Nam. They were not inexperienced rookies. When they returned, I began debriefing them. All 4 men were shaken. F-14 pilots were not used to any other craft outrunning them, let alone moving at what appeared to be light speed. The incident was reported, and it disappeared into the military establishment, probably filed away in some file cabinet in the Pentagon or the Defense Intelligence Agency offices, or both. Before that incident, I was a UFO skeptic. Just thought I would let you know that probably 99% of military UFO sightings are never divulged to the public, close quote. I have posted a report with this original letter from the USS Enterprise 1970s Navy commander at my Earthfiles.com news website. One fact about the UFO phenomenon that our military caught on to a long time ago is that wherever you are on the Earth, after the sun goes down and the sky goes dark, there can be many UFOs moving in the night sky, invisible to naked human eyes, because the UFOs can manipulate the electromagnetic spectrum to be greater than 700 nanometers, which is longer wavelengths of infrared radiation. Our human eyes cannot see those longer wavelengths, and the dark night sky just looks dark to us until we go to a store and buy an infrared scope or camera, and then we can see UFOs hiding in the night sky. To that point, here is a September 12th email that I received from Jim Slikker, who was a deputy sheriff for the Orange County Sheriff's Department for 30 years, from 1983 to 2013. It reads, quote, "Hi, Linda. My name is Jim Slikker. I am a retired Orange County deputy sheriff and tactical flight medic. On September 11th, 2021, I was in my backyard observing planets and stars with my telescope. I recently purchased a handheld FLIR camera that has zoom and can record. I was looking at wildlife behind my house with my camera and pointed it at the sky to watch a jet flying by. Near the jet were 2 objects, or one object with 2 heat sources. I could not see it without the camera. I started recording, and what you see in the video is what I saw. The file is 64 megabytes, so it won't email. I made a link to the video and posted it on YouTube. Please feel free to contact me. Thanks for everything you do, Linda. Jim Slikker, Earthfiles member," close quote. Jim is also trained as a flight medic and continues to this day as a reserve volunteer who still does helicopter rescues of people and dogs. And before I show you the FLIR infrared video he took last weekend on Saturday night, I want you to see Jim Slikker at work high in the air, standing on the Howe helicopter skid to rescue a dog. And I wonder how many of you can watch this all the way through without covering your eyes. Let me know in the chat. That's incredible, isn't it? Well, I wanted to see Jim's FLIR infrared recording of the two round heat sources that he could not see with his naked eye, but recorded with his new FLIR infrared monocular camera. So he sent me the video on Sunday, September 12th, from his home in Trabuco Canyon, Orange County, California, 24 miles northeast of San Clemente. He agreed to do a recorded interview afterward to share with you all tonight. So here is 58-year-old Jim Slikker from his home in Trabuco Canyon, Orange County, California.
I wanted to get a FLIR camera, so I bought one. And I had also read that infrared cameras can pick up sometimes UFOs because of their technology, almost like a cloaking device, which I've read that they can be visible with infrared, not the human eye.
Right.
So I was in my backyard. I have a telescope. I brought my telescope outside. I set it up. I was looking at the moon. I was looking at Jupiter, Saturn, and I was looking behind my house, and I saw a jet fly over. So I brought my camera up, and I was looking at the jet, and the jet was a large passenger liner. It was at a cruising altitude, so maybe 35,000 feet. And you could see the navigation lights on the wings. So I was looking at it through the camera, and the signature on the plane was really bright. Anything that's white is hot. You could see the outline of the wings. You could see the fuselage. And while I was looking at that, all of a sudden I saw these two lights that were in between the jet and myself. Maybe 50 or 60 degrees above the horizon is about where I was seeing these lights. And I could see the jet further out, still moving across the sky, and I pulled the camera away from my eye, and I could see the jet, but the lights that I was seeing with the camera, I couldn't see with my eye. And this thing has a record button on it. So I started recording, which is what you see in the video. By the time I pushed the record button, the jet had already passed out of the frame, so you just see what I was seeing.
And these two circular objects are what you got in the recording that you were seeing sort of below the jet.
Correct.
But when you took the FLIR away from your eyes, you saw nothing in the sky when the jet was there.
You could see the nav lights, from the jet way up in the sky, but the lights that were in between the jet and myself, the two lights, you could not see with the naked eye. And I was watching the lights, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm looking at them, and I can see the jet going away, and I know that it's not navigation lights from an aircraft. The way that the lights were moving, it would almost go up to 90 degrees, and it looked like the lights would come close together, then they'd go up farther apart, and then they would come back horizontal, and then it would go the other direction. It was really erratic maneuvers, but what was interesting, zero sound, nothing. It wasn't making any sound whatsoever.
You're an experienced pilot. What would you estimate the altitude of the airliner was, and what do you estimate the altitude of those two circular glowing objects were that you could only see through the FLIR?
I would estimate the jet was flying at a cruising altitude of probably 35,000 feet, flying in a northerly direction. The two lights that I saw, I would estimate to be maybe 15 to 20,000 feet in elevation compared to the passenger liner. The two lights definitely closer than the passenger liner because I could see the passenger liner way off in the distance, and the lights were in between the jet and myself.
Could you hear noise from the jet?
I could hear noise from the jet, and the jet faded away. The jet flew out of the frame and was gone, and there was no sound from the object whatsoever. It was completely silent.
Okay, and that is the two, as I looked at the FLIR video, the question in my mind was, am I looking at one large thing with these two circular lights or whatever on it, or are they two independent? What do you think?
I've watched the video over and over dozens of times and paused it, and it almost looks like it could be maybe the back of one of the triangle-type craft where you just see two lights. Sometimes you see UFOs, they'll be together and they split really far apart and maybe come back together again. It almost looked like it might have been just one craft. I don't know. What do you think?
I think my initial reaction in seeing the video was that these were two objects on some kind of a larger object.
Okay, yeah, I was kind of thinking the same thing.
You could not hear any sound from them.
No sound whatsoever. And where I live, it's extremely quiet. It wasn't making a sound at all. Nothing.
How do you put that in the context of everything you've been exposed to in law enforcement?
Well, I tell you, Linda, I've always been fascinated with space, watching Star Trek, as a kid. But there was one thing that happened, and my wife was with me, and it really, really got me into, I need to start doing research and see what I can find. It was probably a year and a half ago. My wife and I were driving home. We were coming up onto our street, and I looked up and I saw two lights side by side, kind of like what you saw in the video, but they weren't that bright. They looked kind of like an average lit star. However, they were in a spot, because I'm always looking up at the sky, they just looked out of place, and they only looked to me at being maybe a couple of thousand feet in the air. But when you look at them, they look like stars. So I parked the car in the middle of the street. I got out. My wife got out, and I pointed, and I said, "What's that?" And my wife looked up. He goes, "What?" And I pointed, those two stars right there. And she looks, and you saw it looked like a kind of a little glow from the two lights, and it was instantaneous. It covered the entire sky, and it was gone. I almost thought like it knew that we were there because it flew off as soon as I pointed, faster than a meteor going across the sky.
What was the color?
It was the two dots, the two lights that I saw that looked like stars were white. But when it started to kind of glow a little bit, it got almost like a pinkish, weird color, just real quick though, and then it almost like it had to power up first before it took off.
Working in law enforcement, have you ever had a discussion with anybody in law enforcement about UFO phenomena because it's been reported to the sheriff's office?
One of my friends that I see all the time told me an incident that happened in Laguna Hills, which is a city in Orange County. Some people in this apartment complex seeing a UFO or flying saucer in the sky, and then after it left, they said that a black helicopter showed up. I've talked to my colleagues quite often about, if they believe, if they've seen things. And most of the people that I work with, they've all seen things, but nobody wants to say anything because they're afraid that they're going to be ridiculed. And they believe in UFOs. They believe that extraterrestrials are on our planet, just like I do. But they won't say anything in an official capacity because they're afraid of being ridiculed.
Don't you think it is a dangerous policy of ridicule now on planet Earth? Don't you think that it would be better psychologically and every other way if the whole planet were told the whole truth at the same time?
Oh, I think it would benefit humanity tenfold. They talk about that they can give us 0-point energy where nobody has to use fossil fuels anymore. It would help the entire planet. I just think that our government's doing a disservice by not letting this information come public, especially now. There's cameras, video. It just boggles my mind that they haven't come forward with it yet. I just think that our military and our government is doing a huge disservice to the citizens of this planet, not telling them what's out there and what's going on.
All right, Ian, tell me, what were some of the comments on Jim Slikker with his feet on that skid of that helicopter where they were doing a training exercise of pulling a dog from the football field up to the helicopter in training?
So someone's just put a comment in, says their hands were sweating while they were watching that. It was held us on the edge of our seats, Linda.
I know, and the first time that I screened it, Jim sent it a couple of days ago. I had no idea what it was, and so I was sitting at the computer and I clicked open the MP4 and came up big screen. I have a large screen, so a big screen with that sound of the helicopter, and I found myself grabbing like vertigo and thinking, oh my Lord, how we need to thank the people on this planet who help us all so much, like Jim and others who can do something like that, can stand on the skid of a helicopter and reach out and bring a dog up or bring a human up or a child, and that sometimes I think we take for granted, and these people we need to thank in our prayers and in our mind every single day. So, Jim, if you're out there and you're watching, thank you for sharing. It is astounding. Now, another thing that I wanted to just leave kind of another step in an evolution of all of this before we go to questions and answers. It was, I think, 1996, and I had flown to England for crop formation investigations. And this was a period of time where more and more black helicopters were being seen over the crop formations, and nobody fully understood what was going on. And this particular day, there had been so many black helicopters over what is called the Eastfield and Woodborough Hill. There's an area that is like a heart of the Vale of Pusey when it comes to where crop formations over since at least the end of the 1970s into the 1980s, there's been these areas. And I was with some friends and colleagues investigating, and we had been in the Eastfield. Went across the road toward Woodborough Hill. We were exploring that area while we were watching all of these helicopters that kept coming and going. And then suddenly in the afternoon, it had been a blue, clear sky, and it was like, where did this huge storm come from? But it was thunder and lightning, and rain was coming down so hard that when the storm finally ended, and a bunch of us, I think, were at the barge waiting out the rain, that the east field had water as you go down, it went down to a road. And we had driven down to the road with the idea that we were going to investigate another place, and it was completely filled. It was actually flooded. So we went back up to an area that was on higher ground in the East Field, and I had on that trip, it was a military grade monocular that would go into night vision and infrared and 3 or 4 different categories. And I had been experimenting with it because it had been loaned to me by a military person that was sort of a friend. And he said, why don't you work with this on this trip? And we were very interested in why the big storm, why all the helicopters before the storm, and that was the reason why we went back to the East Field. Well, now I'm just curious about what I'm going to see in this dense darkness. The field seemed darker than normal because of maybe all of the water everywhere. It just somehow seemed really heavily dark. And I brought the monocular. I had it on an infrared. And I'm just looking. I have no goal. I have no thought. And I see suddenly it just popped in. It was an oval, not a circle. It was shaped like that. And it was so powerfully undark. It was so bright that I remember I jumped. I like, what in the world? And now I passed the monocular to, there were 7 or 8 of us. We ended up going on Art Bell's show, because when I would be in England, he would like me to do broadcasts. And the group of us went to talk about what I'm sharing with you right now. And so everybody now is passing around the monocular and, oh my God, oh, what is that? Oh, and then the person is, Linda, it's jumping. What? They hand it back. Inside of the monocular frame, had been like this, and now it's doing this. And I said, how can it be staying right inside of our field of view for an hour, for a solid hour? Whatever this was did all kinds of motions, patterns, jumps. At one point, the oval, while I happened to have it, I feel very fortunate because it was one of the more amazing things I've ever seen through anything like this. It had been like this, and it would jump as an oval. And all of a sudden, it went into a perfect square, and it had just exactly the reflection. If you had a mirror under a sun and you were making it do that, it started this fibrillation of bright reflection. And people, this group of us, the 7 or 8, they started screaming, come here, we want to see what you are. During that whole time, all of this interaction through the monocular, we could never see anything but the deep, deep darkness of that water-filled East Field. And yet what we were seeing in infrared was constant motion, jumping, the strange mirror. And right at the very end, went on for an hour. And right at the very end, I think it was, we were all just staring. We were just staring into the darkness because we were seeing so much activity in the monocular. And I don't know, maybe it was a goodbye, but what we all saw, and I reported on Coast to Coast, where we had been looking and could see nothing but the darkness. All of a sudden, we're red, it went red, red, and then it was over. And we said, is it possible that whatever this was, that could only be seen in infrared until the last strange red, red flicker, almost like a joke almost, is that why all of the helicopters were coming low into the east field through that whole day leading up to the thunderstorm? Was there something that the UK, the US, somebody knew had come into that land in the Vale of Pusey, and they were sending helicopters to do maybe, I don't know, chase it away? It was truly one of the most extraordinary, where you talk about high strangeness that went on for an hour with 7 or 8 other people, and everybody is seeing the same thing. It has given me a deep respect for that window that infrared can give us when we begin to understand that we are not alone on planet Earth, through the solar system, or beyond. And what does it want? And why does it do the strange things that it does? That's what keeps me going. I think that's part of why all of you who come, that we all genuinely would like to understand the truth, the real truth of what is it that interacts with, as John Keel would say, haunts planet Earth. If we knew the whole truth, we might never use the word haunt again. We might begin to move into a whole new paradigm in which we are learning about and cannot stop wanting to learn about other intelligences in this universe who are not a threat, but are so advanced that they choose to let us keep evolving on our own to a point that is a mystery to me. When do we finally get to a point where we could be face to face with those that are peaceful, friendly, but so advanced that they know how to move point to point in this universe, and they know how to send non-organic intelligence, like maybe that oval in the east field, to not only monitor, but to interact, like what happened to us in the east field. And I wanted to share that with you because infrared is fascinating. Now, Ian, what have we got in comments and questions?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say thank you to the generous audience this evening on the Super Chats. There's quite a few of them, but I'll go through them all. Courtney C, Jenna McHugh, Moonbird,
hi,
Diane
Moonbird,
Eric Ackley, Tatiana Hallam, Back to Constitution, Forest Lady, Rafat Dillon, Stop the Zeal, Catherine O'Donnell, Caroline Boyce, Demonic Hordes, Sexy Sadie, Whisper of Love, and Rick Owen. And I want to do a special shout out as well to Moonbird's mum in Delaware, who apparently remembers Linda before he does.
Wow. Well, I just can't thank you enough. Really, I just can't. And I just hope we keep growing and growing and growing, because it feels like these kinds of dialogues are so necessary now in this planet that is going through so much change. And no matter what, on the other side, there must be finally the joining up of truth. We're not alone in this universe. It's ridiculous. We're not alone in this solar system. And no matter what the bell-shaped curve is, positive, neutral, negative, we are never going to be strong in our own shoes, our own souls, if we don't come to terms with the entire truth about our planet's relationship with other intelligences. I just feel that so firmly, and I hope that you all do too. Okay, Ian, what about questions?
Well, there's a comment, first of all. Could
Okay.
the helicopter have been corralling the lights in some way? I think other people have reported that in Wiltshire as well.
Calling? What
Corralling.
spell what you're saying.
As you coal something, as though, you know, like a rancher coals cattle.
Oh, calling. Oh, it sounded like calling, and I couldn't think. Okay, calling. Oh, that the helicopters would be doing something to provoke. Or I don't know. I have never heard that before. What I have heard, and maybe this is another one important piece because this also happened in England. It was a different year, but it all had to do again with why are helicopters so focused on the crop circles, as they were for a period of time, off and on, especially in the 90s. And what I remember about this, I had been shown at a private home a videotape that had been taken by a man up on Picket Hill, which is, it's like a double saddle. Here's Woodborough Hill, and here's the East Field and South Field, and here is Woodborough Hill, and then there's this Picket Hill. And he had gotten, this man who had shown me his video, he had been with a tripod on this hill, and the hill went down in like this, like a double saddle, like a camel's back, like this, and there was wheat all around in here, and then it went up onto Woodborough Hill, which has trees on top. So these two hills are sort of like this. And what this man on Picket Hill had gotten on a really good camera, on a tripod, nothing moving, nothing shaking, were 6 orbs of light that were coming in and through the wheat between the two hills. And there already was one crop formation down, and they were moving through the wheat, not making a pattern, but as if, almost as if the lights were looking for something. And as you were looking at the video, as we were watching in a house on a TV screen, all of a sudden, the first thing, you hear a helicopter. And then he widens out to a wider shot on Woodborough Hill. And then you see this huge black helicopter come up over Woodborough Hill, very close to the ground, drops down into this area that is between the two hills. And on the videotape, those 6 lights, they are large enough that you're not confusing them with glints. This is solid balls of light, and they just race off. And the helicopter, big helicopter. Remember, the man's on this Picket Hill, and he's watching all of this with his camera. Does rotations around as if waiting for the lights. Well, when I saw that videotape, I said to the man who had done it, I said, I would really like to have your permission. We can do it in writing. I would like to go to some production companies. I would love to do a film that would be centered around this powerful videotape. And that lights, whatever they are involved with the creation of crop formations. A lot of us by then, as we got into the mid and late 1990s, I think had become convinced that there was a relationship between many people seeing larger spheres, smaller spheres of glowing light that was in relationship to the creation of some of the patterns. So we had a discussion in England, he and I, face to face. He was very interested, said he would like to hear what I could find out in the United States. I talked with a production company who was very interested. Now I'm talking on long distance telephone. This was after I got back. And I know that that is always a huge risk, especially international calls. Unfortunately, that's the world we're in. It isn't like we're going to do anything wrong, but it is that the governments of this world, including the United States, they tap computers, they tap phone lines, they tap all kinds of things constantly. And this must have happened, that my phone would be tapped for a bunch of reasons. And I was in Philadelphia at the time because I got home and had called him up to tell him that it looked like I would be able to have a meeting. I would need a copy of the video for screening, but that there was great interest in doing this film. And it was only, I think, 2 or 3 days after what seemed to me, we're going forward, it's going to be fascinating. This is the most astonishing video I've ever seen from crop circles. This would be exciting to share with audiences everywhere. And I get a phone call, and he says, after our last phone conversation, within a couple of hours, there was a ring at my door. He lived in central England. A man was standing there. I opened the door to find out who it was and why. And he said, I'm here to tell you that you are not to work with Linda Moulton Howe on the film that you have been discussing, and that we may do something legally to take your videos, and you need to understand something quite serious. The helicopters in the fields are there with housings of technology in which we are aiming at the crowds of people who go to formations, because we are looking for those that are Homo sapiens sapien and those who are not. That is a true conversation in the 90s, somewhere around 96 or something. So the insight there is that infrared is probably also used by a lot of military and police services when it comes to the whole area of UFOs and non-humans. And that in the crop circles, it was so astonishing that there would have been any kind of blatant, serious threat like that. And using my name is not to talk to me, but what happened? It destroyed going forward on that project because he became afraid. I'm hoping that we will continue to evolve and grow past incidents like that. I'm hoping that there's going to be a huge shift, that this whole planet cannot be kept dumb and blind for the foreseeable future. And what I've told you is a true story, both of them, that we have phenomena in so many directions, and we should be able to talk with each other in television, radio, news, everywhere. We should be able to talk about everything. And physicists should be able to talk with us about what they are really discovering about the nature and physics of this universe. And archaeologists and anthropologists should be able to talk about the ruins that I know for a fact are underground on Mars. There's no question. John Brandenburg knows that. Lots of people that I know. I know that there have been papers going back about, we did various mock camera and others looking for very specific sites of an archaeological nature on Mars. And the fact that we continue to live on a planet where all of that is kept officially away. It just seems to me abjectly wrong. Anyway, now, Ian, what else have we got?
Well, that was fascinating to hear about you seeing the lights as well. I've seen the lights over
Yeah.
East Field, well, to the
I've seen
left of
them
East
many
Field, as you go
times.
between there and the field above it. And many other people have witnessed those lights and also seen the helicopters. Just want to clarify as well, I was trying to say corralling, I think is the pronunciation.
Corralling, like you would
light.
corral a horse in a stable.
That's it, yes.
Well,
to stay on the subject of the crop circles as well, Linda, can you also talk about any of the crop circles that have been translated? And also, would you like to visit the English crop circles again?
Oh, I would love, 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 love to go if Team Satan 666 was not there doing their destructive hoaxes, if the government would not be there with helicopters basically intimidating and running people off. I think of some of the most beautiful hours of my entire life were 1992 and 1993 in the Vale of Pusey at Stonehenge. And that was a time of complete innocence. People forget. We have had moments of innocence. You might remember, Ian, that places like 60 Minutes, news, normal, straightforward news in the United States, were running straightforward, the New York Times doing straightforward articles. There were about the crop formations in England, the reports that strange lights were associated. And in those first 2 years, there was a magic, a true magic. A magic is when you feel joyous, you feel enervated, you feel that everything that you are doing seems to have some kind of gentle guidance for a purpose. Everything flowed, everything had synchronicity. Those were the summers in 1992 and 93 in England. And I think of it as the beauty of everything that was happening was staggering. The love that people honestly had with each other in the classic agape was there among those of us who were in the fields and feeling that interaction with a presence and energy that was exciting. And somehow you felt like that being in the presence of that energy, that you were somehow being I don't know what the word is, that you were being somehow taught and lifted spiritually in your soul, in your body, your relationship to the matter world, and beginning to see beyond the matter world in a way that you had never experienced before. When I stood at the big formation in Milk Hill back in '93, and I've mentioned this on the Earthfiles YouTube channel before, but it is so important and it goes to the heart of where I can't find the exact words, but this is what happened and it says what I'm trying to say. This is when it was 430 feet long, it was huge, and I was with a group of people. It was my first moment that summer in any of the crop formations. And everybody had chosen to stay at this far end toward the Milk Hill horse. And something, that's what I mean about when you start getting pulled, you feel directed, you have images as if something is trying to fill you or guide you in some sort of a gentle but a wonderful way. And that was that when I walked with my 35 millimeter camera with the idea that I would stop on the outside so I would take photos of the lay of this beautiful pattern without walking on it. It was as if something was saying, don't walk on this. And that's when I walked up to move some of the wheat so I could get a clear photo because I wasn't going to walk in there. And that's when I felt what felt exactly like warm jello. My hands reaching for the camera, there was warm jello. I was so shocked. But it stopped me. And I did take all of the photos that I wanted to from a safe distance. And then it was as if something, now go in and go to the far end. And it felt like I was being guided that way. And when I did go to the very farthest end of this huge pattern, and everybody else was at the other end, when I stopped and looked out on the thick growing wheat beyond the pattern, that is when that thought voice that's been with me my whole life said, as if, what is behind these patterns? As if I was asking, what is behind these patterns? And then came this thought voice. Life on this planet is not guaranteed. And with that thought voice came the image of a beautiful, beautiful Siberian tiger. I think they are, like all of the tigers and lions, I think they are so magnificent in terms of conscious life. And somehow, something knowing me, life on this planet is not guaranteed. And then this holographic, three-dimensional, vital image of a beautiful, beautiful tiger. It was as if something was saying, you are experiencing the love and the joy and the sheer happiness of being in organic consciousness in other organic life, like the wheat, like the barley. But on the other side of joy, on the other side of all that's positive, there can be something that is dangerous because we don't know enough, because we have not had the good fortune of being educated as Homo sapiens sapien about all of the possible yin and yang, black and white, huge bell-shaped curve in this universe. And it was at that moment, in that crop formation, it was like all of that came in that brief moment. And that is the turning point for me. That was the turning point for me. That the crop formations were far, far more profound than their beauty. And you put the two together, mathematical, heart of God, souls, that's the essence of the crop formations for me. And the governments acted as if they were threatened. All of the governments acted as if they were threatened. That's always been puzzling. Helicopters, the statement, they're monitoring who is Homo sapiens sapien and who is not. I suppose that implies that in the fields of England and wherever crop formations were, that there were intelligence operations looking for those who would be in the category of hybrids, and there definitely are hybrids, versus non-hybrids. If we only knew the whole big picture, maybe we would better understand and have sympathy for some of the things our governments do. But lacking honesty, lacking telling us, lacking educating us, I think the disconnect then becomes dangerous for everybody. So, like everything we're dealing with on the earth now, it is bell-shaped curve, yin and yang, from positive to negative. And Ian, what else have we got?
I was just going to say, I remember those days well, those early days of the crop circles, and when the very famous Led Zeppelin one, the one that's featured on the Led Zeppelin album cover, when that came down, it was only a few weeks ago, I was talking to a woman who told me she was camping in that field that night before it even appeared, and it had appeared overnight, but she had also had an ET experience during that evening as well.
An ET? What kind? What type?
Well, I'll ask her to contact you directly about that and see if she can give you more information on it.
All right. Yes, in the balls of light. Well, I've got a folder that I keep filling with sphere glowing balls of light stories. And it is as if these diastereomers, these spheres, can be used to transport, maybe advanced beings know how to transport through them. But if nothing else, I think it is fair to say that just like what happened in Hessdalen, where the balls of light were seen, or flickers of light up in the mountains, there is a technology that is being used by advanced something that comes in the form of small, it can be ping pong, baseball, softball, basketball. They can be any of those sizes. And they're glowing, and they seem to provide a tremendous number of functions, uploading, downloading information, and interacting with Earth, really through probably thousands of years. And the crop circles definitely are in the category of productions by some of those balls of light. Are you there?
Linda,
yeah.
You talk about souls a lot. This is a question or a comment from someone in the chat. Linda, you talk about souls a lot. I believe I felt my mum's soul leave her body as I held her hand as she passed away. Have you ever heard of anything like this before?
Yes. Yes. Many emails that have come over the years about the same thing. And I personally have not any doubt. To me, the soul is the animating force in human life. The way it feels to me, I have used at least a concept that helps me. I think of my soul as being a quantum energy field that is connected to the whole quantum universe. I'm not saying that I understand how that happens. I just have this feeling, impression, a kind of visual image, not just me, all life forms, the friendlies, the neutrals, the hostiles, everything that has consciousness. So the soul is, to me, like some kind of an energy system between conscious entities and what should we call it? The cosmic whole. If there were an infinite number of universes, you still, to talk about the whole, the cosmic whole of it all, an infinity. Infinity is incomprehensible to the human mind. That doesn't mean it isn't infinite, it just means it's not comprehensible. But when you think about that pressure that you get in your chest, when you pick up a baby or a kitten or things that we love without judgment, and you feel that pressure in your chest, to me, that is the connection between this quantum energy field that is the soul. And it is the soul that recycles. It is the soul that is reincarnating. In Glimpses of Other Realities, Volume 2, my book that has gone through another printing, there is the 106-page chapter that has 6 different people who have had 6 interactions with beings in which all of them are dealing with tubes. Tubes that have light at the top and light at the bottom, and inside are beings, some recognizable as human, some various kinds of non-human. Some of the abductees in the past have referred to it as the resurrection technology. And in those abduction stories, in those particular ones associated with seeing, being in a room, being able to sketch these tubes with light that have beings of various types in them, the humans all have slightly different perspectives about what the function is and what is happening. But if you boiled all of it down, it would be the souls are what are vital in the study, in the interaction, in the continuing evolution of consciousness. It is the souls that move in and out of container bodies. And now some argue that if there's advanced technology and that it wants human bodies in order to have human souls that they don't have, is that threatening? Is that a problem? Is that a level of something we don't understand? How much of the universe are farmers planting life? How much of this universe are harvesters harvesting from life? And what exactly are the rules around the souls? I think that where everything is driving us, all of the papers that are coming in physics now, new ones all the time about getting closer and closer, are we in a holographic universe? If we are, is it Jerry Wills? Is it the intelligence that Jerry Wills communicated with when he went through the Muru door in Peru on Lake Titicaca? Are those an example? The voice, is that like a 9th dimension where they can mix and match atoms and molecules and make anything? And we're in a 3rd dimension. I'm just beginning to feel that all of it is true. All of it is true. And that our only limitation is whether or not we are allowed to be educated as a wonderful species, if we were educated, if we were allowed to thrive, every individual could thrive and their soul could thrive, we would be on a planet of paradise. And maybe someone, somehow, through all this current chaos, is trying to get to that golden field where there would not be death and war as a constant presence. It's like back to that crop formation in '93, where the voice said, life on this planet is not guaranteed, and was this head of this, like a hologram, that's what it looked like, standing there in the wheat. It was like somebody showed me a hologram of this beautiful tiger. And maybe the intelligence that showed me that knows how much I love and respect the cat world, big, small, and that it can be dangerous. But that danger seems to always be in the fabric of this universe that is built around yin and yang. So right now, at this point in the timeline, I keep thinking, everything that we are learning about this universe, especially if it is projected as a hologram from another dimension or timeline, it has to be a training ground. It has to be doing something that is training, teaching, testing. And when Thomas Campbell, the physicist, says this universe is an entropy reduction trainer for souls, I think he's maybe as close as anybody's ever come. And that's why on my t-shirts, down with entropy, up with light. I think you hang on to that, keep going with that. It's got to help your soul. So I've gone a little bit long. I've really enjoyed being able to talk to you about some of these memories tonight. I didn't expect to do that. But I just want you to feel, as I was standing at the end of that big, huge crop formation in 1993 in England, feeling in a way I was getting a warning from something that actually cared. But at the same time, it left me with huge, huge love for my fellow species. And on that note, I want to say to all of you, wherever you are in this whole planet, agape love for our consciousness, for our souls. We need to help each other get through this revolutionary time. I love you. I'll see you next week.
Turn on closed captions for YouTube videos by clicking the white CC button on the lower right. The default language for Linda's videos is English. If you would like to see the captions in another language, click on the white settings button next to the CC button. Select Subtitles CC, and then select Auto Translate. Select a language, and the captions will now appear in that language.
Sort of gone through, and they will hold their heads. I never had a cat do that before. And they'll pull against the comb, helping me get out snarls. and I think it's the best they've ever been.